Alrighty, we are live and good to go.
Good afternoon. I'm Gwen Whistler. I'm the chair of the Planning and Economic Development Committee, and I'd like to welcome you to our September 12th meeting. All council members and staff are participating virtually. To help our audience follow along, I'll state each section of the agenda aloud. We're streaming live on our virtual engagement hub, which is accessible through the virtual engagement hub link on the front page of the city's website. We also have an option for the public to listen live by phone by dialing 855-925-2801 and entering the code 8187. For those of you out there today, welcome. We have the option for people to call in and comment live during the meeting. To call in and comment live, use the same number, 855-925-2801, meeting code 8187. Your phone will be muted and you will hear the meeting live. At this point, callers will hear, for more options, please press star. Pressing star 3 will allow callers to continue to listen live and join the speaker queue. If you're watching the meeting through the live stream while you are listening to the meeting by phone, please be sure to turn down the volume on your device before speaking. And for anyone not speaking, I just remind you to mute when you're not speaking, and I'll keep an eye if you want to raise your hand or etc. Council members, I'll try to keep an eye on you. So I'll now go through and introduce all of the committee members and staff who are participating virtually. And when I introduce you, if you just give us a quick hello. Councilwoman Sandra Kilgore.
Good afternoon.
Councilwoman Sage Turner.
Good afternoon.
Assistant City Manager Ben Woody.
Good afternoon.
Workforce Development Programs Coordinator Alex Mitchner.
Hi, good afternoon.
Interim Assistant Director and Community Economic Development Frank McGowan.
Good afternoon.
And I don't see that Brownie is on here yet, but our Buncombe County Commission Chair Brownie Newman will join us. And then I also see Rachel Wood, who is our Assistant City Manager.
Good afternoon.
Great. So for the minutes, could I get a motion to approve the June minutes?
So moved.
Thank you, Sandra. And Sage seconded. Great. And so because this is a virtual meeting, I'll do a roll call vote. Councilwoman Kilgore?
Here.
I'm sorry, I'm asking for a positive vote on the minutes.
Aye.
Okay. And Councilwoman Turner?
I'm here and I.
And I'm here and I. Great. So the minutes have been approved. So the next up is, this is not subject to vote. It's really for information purposes and a program near and dear to, I think, all of our council people's hearts. We're going to hear a report on the CALA program. And so I'm going to turn it over to Alex Mitchner to present this item. Am I pronouncing your last name correctly, Alex?
Yes, Mitchner.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, thank you all for being here this afternoon. Katie's going to be sharing her screen with me. Let's see. All righty, here we go. All right, so CALA 2022. So this picture that's on the screen at the moment is our group from this past summer. And Katie, you can go ahead and hit the next slide. So just to give everyone a decent amount of background information, this program has been around for a very long time. It's been around since 2007. And what we really pride ourselves on is a way this program allows us to allow students to kind of get their feet wet into the workforce field a little bit. We hope that they're going to make strong, meaningful connections with various community members and their internship supervisors, so that ultimately, once they decide to either join the workforce, or after they go off to college, whatever, they know that Asheville is a place that they can come home to eventually, that their roots are here, and those connections that they made while in their CALA internships are going to be some lifelong connections at the end of the day. So from this summer, we had a total of 38 students. Let me tell you, 38 teenagers all at one time is a lot. But we have a great group of students this year. I'm really, really proud of all the progress that they've made. The foundation of Kayla is equity. So we really try to make sure we're looking at everything with an equity lens. So there's a little bit of everything going on with the Kayla program. So every spring, I go through a whole application process. So pretty much during the late fall and early winter, I'm out marketing the program into Asheville City schools and to Buncombe County high schools as well. And then with the help of a lot of counselors in the area, we really get the word out there for our students. The students typically, Kayla applications come out usually around Valentine's Day, and they have a little bit over a month to apply for the program. And we're trying to keep in mind that this is hopefully going to be geared towards more students that are going to be first generation college students one day. We want a plethora of students from a variety of different backgrounds, but you don't have to just be a straight A student to be in this program. Pretty much we just want to help you get that extra boost. If you've got a couple C's and D's or whatever, we want to see that you're at least making some form of an effort. We're going to try to help you out and give you a chance. So I just want to note that. So our students go through a panel interview process. I have an interview committee that is made up of Kayla alum, local business owners in the area, some of our other city staff that they would end up interning with. We have a little bit of everybody on our interview panel because I can't pick all these babies by myself. That's a lot of pressure, and they need to see that ultimately I don't make the decisions. Our committee makes the decisions when it comes to picking those students. Katie, we can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So what we really pride ourselves on is our model for success. So we're providing summer internships. We have Friday Kayla workshops, and then we also provide school year engagement as well. So focusing in on the school year engagement, that's the process that we're in currently. So that is where I am pretty much on all of our Kayla seniors. They're a little upset with me right now because they've got some major homework, but I put together a plan and a model for each senior to abide by during the first semester of their senior year. That plan arranges for them to apply to college via early action. The quicker that they apply to college, basically there's going to be a higher chance of them earning merit scholarships or potentially getting a full ride. That proved to be a very beneficial thing for us last year, so that's what we're sticking to this year. Katie, we can go to the next slide. So focusing in now on some of our summer internships. So our students work a total of 20 hours a week. 16 of those hours, typically Monday through Thursday, are going to be with their actual internship supervisor at their internship. And then those remaining 4 hours are on Fridays with me for Kayla Learning workshops. So during these workshops, we do a little bit of everything. During our Kayla orientation every year, I find out what the groups are really into and try to provide workshops based on their interests, as well as workshops around college support. And then we also do some Kayla Learning field trips to help them do some team bonding things as well to really strengthen that bond, because at the end of the day, their Kayla peers are who they're going to be networking with later on down the road. And then lastly, upon completion of the program, the students receive a $2,000 scholarship for college. Next slide. So here is a list of the internship sites that we worked with this year. And I want to note here that the internship sites pretty much vary every year. They change based on what our students are currently interested in. So after we go through the whole Kayla application process and we narrow down who we're actually going to work with, usually that's about mid-April, first week of April, I sit down in conference with every single one of our students and try to figure out what their interests are, what their hobbies are, and put together some various options for them from there. So if I've got a student that's super into music and is like, I want to make music videos, I have my best friend from college and roommate is the owner of Slay the Mic, so that was probably our most popular internship this summer. I had several students that were into videography, and they got to go behind the scenes, make music videos, go to video shoots, get to see a side of the music industry that they ordinarily would not see. Okay, next slide. So here are just some pictures. I wanted to give you guys just a quick glance of the different things our students were doing this summer. This young man in the front is really into dancing. He was leading Zumba, and he was also with Slay the Mic as well. I've got a young lady up here feeding a dog. She wants to be a veterinarian one day, so we had her with Brother Wolf. So just a couple various pictures. In your bottom left-hand corner in front of this Brookshire bus, we went whitewater rafting that day. It was a really, really fun field trip, and I think we definitely bonded together that day. We were out at the Nantahala. Next slide, please. Okay, so focusing in on the workshops and the field trips. So these are the various workshops and field trips that we did this summer. I love to really have guest speakers come in and meet with our students. I feel like that leaves a really strong impact on them, so they get to, kind of have that light bulb moment to see who their community leaders are, put a face with a name. They usually see signs on the streets, but, when they have that intimate connection, it makes a difference and helps give them a drive to want to give back to their community one day. So we started off at the end of our Kayla orientation going on a trolley tour so they could get a gist of some of the history, around Asheville, and it can give them a decent overview. Let's see, on June 24th, Councilwoman Whistler came and spoke to the students, and I think we focused really on equity, social justice, and microaggressions that day. Let's see, on July 8th, we really incorporated a whole entrepreneurship focus. So we had various entrepreneurs come in and meet with the students. So part of the homework that I gave out this summer, basically all of our students had to create a business plan and they had to pretend that they were an entrepreneur. They did not like me because they had some serious homework this summer, but it was beneficial for them in the long run. So once we divided the students into groups, they had to figure out or decipher among their group who had the best business plan. And from there, they had to basically create a whole plan, business cards, they shot commercials, the whole 9 yards. And they presented at the end of the summer at our Kayla finale on basically what their plan was, what they'd like to accomplish, and if it's something that we can make a reality one day. I really want them to see that, you can create your own business one day if that's something that you'd like to do. And they can see like, okay, this is attainable. It's something within my reach. Okay, so continuing on, we went whitewater rafting. On July 22nd, I had a couple more guest speakers come in with that entrepreneurship focus to kind of get the juices flowing a little bit when it came to those entrepreneurship projects. We went on a college tour down to Western Carolina University, that's my alma mater, go Cats, just so they can kind of see like, okay, going to college is something that we really want you to do. We want them to get, out of their comfort zone a little bit. A lot of them had never ventured down to Cullowhee before, just to see what a college campus is like and see how that goes. And then on August 5th, we had our Kayla finale where they presented everything that they did this summer, and it was awesome. Next slide, please. So here are just some pictures for y'all to see a little bit of everything that we had going on this summer. So whitewater rafting, typically we had our Kayla workshops over in the Harris Center. Upstairs in the banquet hall is where we lived this summer, but we had a really great time. So just wanted y'all to see some pictures of different things we were doing. Next slide, please. So we are busy. During the school year, I put together a lot of different projects that are addressing equity and social justice issues in our community. Our students are very passionate about these types of projects. So I'm like, okay, after they tell me what they're into, I try to set some things up for them. So we did some various listening sessions with our data services department. Our students are extremely vocal. So anytime that they can use their voice for something, I'm going to try and give them that platform to do that. The opportunity gap was a huge issue with our students. And, these students are attending Asheville High School and various Buncombe County schools. They see the issues on an everyday basis and they're raising their voices about it, Let's see. And we've kind of calmed down a little bit on our community service opportunities because we've been in this pandemic for like 2.5 years, and bringing 38 students to like man a food bank is not attainable right now. But yeah, these are some of the social justice opportunities we had this year. Next slide, please. So another form of the part of the program is really increasing their college awareness. So I do various workshops and different things during the summer and primarily during the fall as well, to help show our students what they need to do to go to college one day. So with myself and our CFNC College Foundation Coordinator, we kind of put on different things during the summers and during the fall just to help the students out. So I'm physically out in the schools constantly, helping a lot of our kids, especially at Asheville High School. I teach workshops to a lot of the AVID students and help them with a lot of personal statement essays and editing and stuff for their college applications. So we're currently doing that right now. And we do some things in the fall and the winter as well when it comes to really showing them that there are scholarships available for them at the end of the day. I think a lot of our schools are bogged down. Like it's difficult when you are a high school counselor and you have like 90 something students, that you're responsible for. I think some students fall through the cracks, and at least with me being in the schools, I can look out for our KALA students so they know about different scholarship opportunities. Typically, I think the reputation is that our students attending Asheville City Schools have more opportunities, and a lot of times Buncombe County does have these opportunities. They're just, you got to dig for them a little bit. So I go do a lot of digging variously on their school scholarship websites. Usually it's in the counseling section, and they get weekly updates of me blowing them up and getting on their nerves about various scholarship deadlines. Next slide, please. So that's just a continuation of various college assistance things that we do during the school year. So putting some miles on the car. All right, so here are the lists of our KALA 22 graduates and the schools that they're attending. So we kind of had a little bit of everybody. I was very proud of this class. We honored them at our KALA finale, but they've all pretty much, they've all pretty much gone off to school by now and have gotten adjusted into dorm life. We had a few get full rides. I think it was 6 or 7 in total. And even if they did not receive a full ride, they got a hefty amount of scholarships by winning a lot of merit scholarships. So it's paying off. It's really, really paying off. We can go to the next slide. So we are always very, very proud of our KALA students. I think the best and most rewarding part of this job is going to their various awards nights and seeing them, earn their certificates, seeing the schools that they're going to be going to, and seeing that, all their hard work is paid off at the end of the day. Next slide, please. And that's at our Asheville High AVID banquet. A lot of our KALA students are in the AVID program at Asheville High. So, we got to go represent. But they did a phenomenal job. I'm really proud of them. And I'm happy to answer any questions. I know I've kind of said a whole mouthful. And here's just some various feedback from some of our students.
Well, thank you, Alex. I think this is a great program. Have you noticed that being selected for the KALA program, is an assist in their college application, or is it sort of neutral?
Yes, it's a huge assist.
Okay.
Literally before this meeting, I was over at Mayheck dropping off one of my students, and we have other students that are out in the county schools that are not KALA students that were begging me to be like, hey, can you help me? Because I don't have this kind of support that those students have.
Okay.
So it's definitely paying off.
And I mean, on their resumes when they're applying to colleges, the fact that they were selected to participate in the KALA program, are you seeing that, literally assist them, when how the colleges look at the students?
Yes, I literally had a meeting with Wake Forest last week. Our brand has grown significantly, and a lot of the colleges in the area are wanting us to set up either some type of partnership or how we can segue a lot of our KALA students into their schools.
Oh, that's great. That's super. Okay. Sandra, do you have your hand raised?
Okay. And that's sort of what my concern was. I love this program. It's wonderful. It's something that I think is a benefit. But this is what one of my questions was: what is the percentage of the students that apply for the KALA program that are not accepted? I just wanted to get an idea.
Off the top of my head, let's see. I'm just trying to think. I think we had around 82 or 83 applicants last year. And I think in total we had 38 this year. But the thing is, we have to keep in mind, we had, I think, 13 returning last year. So about 25 new students in total.
Okay. And And have you seen, I know it's been going on since 2007, have you seen that there is a big difference in the success of the students that participate in Kayla as opposed to some of them that, do not? Do you?
Yes, so I'm actually a Kayla alum myself.
Okay.
And I was in the program now 2010, 2011, around in there. And that is like my network, and the people that I really reached out to are my Kayla peers that I was in school with, and we're there's a lot of us that are back here in town, like I was saying earlier about how we have our selection committee that's made up a lot of Kayla alum that are in the area, in the back here, and a lot of us have come home.
And the thing is, what I like about this is it's such a good program. I was wondering the possibility of expanding it into, more groups. And, of course, you couldn't do it yourself, so they'd have to hire on, different. But I just think this is just something that's so wonderful. And I'd like to be, for any student that wanted to participate, I would love for them to have a chance to participate in a program like this, because it does open up different experiences. I like the way you sort of open up, like I said, life skills. And you sort of let them experience things they never experienced before. This is what actually, sort of piqued their interest in different things and moving forward, because it takes them out of that comfort zone and gives them an opportunity to look forward to things, as opposed to, because a lot of them have not been exposed to a lot of the things that you've exposed them to. And exposure is what's so most important for, to see kids exceed and excel. So I would love to see this just expanded through all the high schools, and
I would too.
Yeah, because it's amazing. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And it makes such a difference. Like Councilwoman Kilgore, there were a group of my students that had never been on the block before this summer, and they let me know how they got to go explore the block and they got to meet you, and they were like, guess who we met this summer, so that stuff really means a lot to them.
Thank you. Yeah. Yes, it was really nice seeing him. In fact, one of the little gentlemen I just ran into him at IHOP. He's working. I can't think of his name right now, but he's all over the place. It's the little guy that was doing the dancing.
I was just with him this afternoon at Mayheck.
Yeah. He's something else. Thank you.
Councilwoman Turner, you had your hand raised?
Yeah, I was just going to share, it sounds like a wonderful program for the kids. I've been able to interact with a couple of them. One of the wonderful things that helps us so much, if you've ever seen our affordable housing guide that was made and organized by a Kayla student, and it was like an enormous effort to pull together, and we've continued to renew it each year. So that I just wanted to share, the successes are on both sides, and it's such a great program. I really appreciate the update, Alex.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think, and I've harped on this, and so this will be my last harping. I think one of the ways for this program to expand is if our business community would actually pay the students and pay the students for the work that's being done during their internships, so that the city and the county weren't 100% on the hook for the cost of the program. These organizations that are benefiting from the work of these interns, the fact that they aren't paying the actual salaries of these students makes it difficult to expand it. So if our business community would step up, I would be pleased to see that.
One thing I will say onto that, a lot of times our students do such a great job during the school year, they end up getting hired later on by the businesses. Literally, I'll be over at Blue Ridge Power on Wednesday, just because they have an internship opportunity for 2 of our students, and 2 students reached out to me letting me know they were looking for a job. Hey, there you go. So sometimes it does work itself out.
Well, except that the city has paid to train them, and those businesses should be paying them themselves, in my humble opinion. But thanks, Alex. It was great. The day it was quite an emotional day when I went and talked to the students, because it was the Roe versus Wade decision had just been decided, and you could just tell that the students knew about it and understood the implications of it. et cetera, for their lives and their friends and their families. And it was really, it was a sad day for at least me. But it was also really heartwarming to see how engaged they were and knowledgeable they were about a, fairly significant social issue. So they are wonderful students. So thanks, Alex. I appreciate it.
Thank
All
you
right.
so much.
So next we're going to move on to the Disparity Study update. And so I'm going to, again, this one is for information and input, but no vote. So I'm going to turn it over to Frank McGowan.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Katie. My name is Frank McGowan. I'm the interim assistant director in community and economic development, assisting Nikki for the next 6 months. And I'm the project manager for the Disparity Study. I'm going to give you a quick overview of this project, where we are right now, and what members of council can expect going forward. Next slide, please. So what is a disparity study? This is our presentation overview. I'm going to talk about what is a disparity study. I'm going to give you some background on our history with disparity studies, share the anticipated project schedule, talk a little bit about the project team, and of course, take any questions. Next slide. So what is a disparity study? It determines, a disparity study is conducted, and we hire a outside consulting firm to do this for us. It determines whether a governmental entity is awarding public contracts in a manner that disproportionately excludes or limits participation by minority, women-owned, or disadvantaged business enterprises, also known as MWBEs. And fundamentally, it's comparing the utilization of MWBEs with the availability of MWBEs in the relevant market area. And that is, the relevant market area is typically defined as part of a disparity study. And just for your knowledge, our current relevant market area is a 10-county region surrounding North Carolina. I don't have those 10 counties memorized, but they're the surrounding counties. And when you include professional services, so architects, engineers, construction managers at risk, and surveyors, it expands to an 11-county region. That 11th county includes Mecklenburg County. So they set a relevant market area and look at our utilization of MWBEs versus availability. This is the real why behind why we do a disparity study. It's legally required for the city to continue its race and gender conscious business inclusion program that we're currently operating. And I'll get into that a little bit more in a moment. Next slide, please. So a little background related to this. The first disparity study was conducted by the city in 1993. In 1994, we adopted a race-neutral minority and women business policy and plan, and city staff were responsible for managing and updating that plan in 98, 99, 2001, 2002, 2004, and 2006 for administrative and legal requirements and compliance. We conducted our second disparity study for contracting and procurement practices, and that was completed in 2019. One thing I should note here is that disparity studies are looking backward, typically over a 5-year period. So that's what they did in the last disparity study, and that is why it's a link to the 2018 disparity study final report. And I'm sorry, I don't think that link works for you, but this is also posted on our city website. If you wanted to look at the results of that disparity study, but we are operating under its guidance now. And that study did recommend race-conscious measures to address identified disparities. Next slide, please. So the last disparity study provided strong evidentiary basis needed for the city of Asheville to create our new and current business inclusion policy, which prescribes additional methods by which the city may achieve parity in contracting and procurement. the city of Asheville adopted that policy on October 27th, 2020, and the effective date was January 1st, 2021. This is bolded for a reason. Pursuant to law, the new disparity study must be conducted at least every 5 years in order to continue any race and gender conscious contracting program. And the sunset provision within our current policy is November 1st, 2023. So the new disparity study is needed to evaluate the effectiveness of our current policy and provide the legal justification for continuing the program if that is warranted. Next slide, please. Our anticipated project schedule is shown here. The RFP was released in July of this year. We've had some pre-proposal meetings, and the submissions were due on August the 19th. We are going through the selection process right now, so you'll notice that date of September 9th. We're almost over the finish line. We're very close with selecting our vendors, or selecting our vendor, I should say, from those who submitted. The date of September 27th, 2022, that is when we are bringing the top-ranked proposal to City Council for a vote for authorization of entering into that contract, and then we'll start the project. This is a pretty aggressive timeline. The amount of data that the vendor is expected to go through, it's really all of our procurement data. They do a sampling of contracts, they go through procurements, they look at documentation related to bids, and the list goes on and on. So it's a pretty extensive deep dive into our management systems and how we go about procurement and how we solicit for participation from MWBE vendors. But as I said, that project will kick off in early October. The completion date we expect to be August of next year, 2023. With policy recommendations due in September, we will have a pretty intensive review of that, and then the final presentations to this committee as well as City Council will be in October, so we can get that approval by City Council of the recommendations in advance of the sunset provision in the policy. Next slide, please. So, as I mentioned, I'm the project manager for this project over the next year, but I can't do this alone. It involves support from really all the departments. We have decentralized contracting within the city, and many of the documents related to bids are managed by the departments themselves. So we really have involvement by every department, but we certainly have support from the city manager's office. This is on the organizational work plan for updates. You'll be hearing regular updates from the city manager related to this project. But we also lean very heavily on others here in the Community and Economic Development Department, the Business Inclusion Office, capital projects, equity and inclusion is very much involved. Our IT services department is critical to making this work. Office of Data and Performance, purchasing is critical as well, but really it's all hands on deck to make sure this gets done. Next slide, please. Do you have any questions?
So, Frank, thank you for this. The city of Asheville gets a lot of criticism on bringing consultants in. Do we have to have a consultant? Why can't we do this in-house? Is it required that an external organization conduct the study?
So I was wondering if legal was on this call, and I don't believe they are, but I'll try to take a stab at this the best I can. The basis for establishing a race and gender conscious program, business inclusion program, is really based on case law. And it has, so there is certainly a legal element. And in fact, part of our RFP process asked very specifically, who on your team is a licensed, is a North Carolina licensed attorney? Because the case law is very specific, and you have to address specific questions related to the case law in your assessment. In addition, the way the study is conducted was also outlined very specifically within that case law. And I've got this in my notes somewhere. It's the 1989 U.S. Supreme Court decision in the case of the City of Richmond versus J.A. Croson. So you have to demonstrate a compelling interest, and quite frankly, it is beyond the capability of city staff to provide that guidance.
That works for me. Councilwoman Kilgore, you had your hand raised?
Hi, Greg. Thank you so much for this information. And the question I have is, I realize you said the program was implemented in 1993, and I'm just wondering, have you seen what kind of positive impact has this program actually, that you've seen? Because I went to look at the report and it was like 505 pages, so I just sort of said I'll ask you about it. But anyway, yeah, I'm trying to see from 1993 to present, where have you seen the largest increase in improvements in these programs as far as, increased proposals from minority groups? I'm just wondering, because I'm thinking early on, you probably didn't see much. And I think probably now in the last couple of years, you're beginning to see more because of what's going on pretty much in the community.
So I'm going to try to, and I may lean on Nikki for a little bit of assistance here. Full disclosure, I've been in this role for 4 weeks and a day. So this is a new project to me. But I have been involved on the procurement side, and I was involved in the drafting of the business inclusion policy that went to council. And what I would say is this: after we adopted the policy, the city of Asheville has been active in developing tools and resources to make sure that we are doing outreach to minority and women-owned businesses. And if I can, I've got something up on my screen that I'd like to share because I think it speaks a bit to how we are doing our outreach. If I can find it. There we go.
And I'll add too while Frank pulls that up. I think part of it too is this disparity study. If we get in the process of updating them on this cycle, then we'll be able to benchmark where we have been and how policy implementation is helping to improve our position. So I do think that this disparity study will tell us a lot compared to where we were in 2018. So it will be a very helpful point of data that we can point to that will directly answer that question. So part of what you're asking is something that we will see reflected in the high level results from the disparity study.
And excuse me, what I'm sharing here are the aspirational goals that we have for construction, repair, general services, professional service contracts, and our purchases. So when we think about how we procure, we do direct procurement here at the city of Asheville, but we also are working through when it comes to construction, especially with, when it comes to contracting, especially with construction, we're typically working with a prime vendor and they're getting subcontractors. So when we look at this chart, it breaks down, there's women-owned businesses, Black American-owned businesses, Asian American businesses, Native American, Hispanic, and it shows you what percentage goal we are attempting to see on each project. So with construction, there was no disparity identified with white women-owned businesses, but there was with Black American-owned businesses, Asian American, Native American, none with Hispanic-owned businesses. So when we put a project out to bid for construction, these goals are plugged in, and there is an expectation that our prime vendors understand what we are looking for in terms of minority business participation, and they are partners in doing that outreach for us. So I think, to answer your question, that is a positive, that we are enlisting our prime vendors as partners in doing that outreach. In addition, we have staff that are involved in projects, and they are doing outreach as well. And we are developing internal tools to support both internal stakeholders, our employees, and external stakeholders, our vendors, as they do that outreach. So I think that is a positive difference. In terms of hard numbers of utilization, I don't have that in hand right now.
Anyone else have any questions? Well, I hope that the disparity study shows that we have made some progress. And I mean, my sense is we have, but obviously not until the hard numbers come up will we know. But good luck, and I know it is a lot of work, and there's a lot of data that gets crunched and analyzed and all that. So good luck with that, and congratulations on your new role. I'm not sure I knew that. So congratulations, Frank.
Thank you.
Great. Okay, so the next on our agenda is the Solar Feasibility Partnership. And this is an action item that we'll be asking our committee members to vote on whether you want to send this recommendation to council or not. We have Brownie Newman, who apparently has somebody at his front door or side door or whatever. Here he is now. He's back. Yep. Our chair of the Buncombe County Commission, Brownie Newman. Welcome, Brownie. And I'll turn it over to you. This is you're speaking to our Planning and Economic Development Committee, Brownie.
Yeah. Thanks, Gwen. Hey, thanks everybody. Thanks for the invitation to be here. Yeah, I'm out in Black Mountain on this house that I'm working on, and the mini split guy just showed up to see what we need to do to get that thing running again. So anyway, I might be multitasking just a little bit during this presentation. We have a great need for housing in our community, and I'm trying to get this one back online. So anyway, I apologize that that's happening at the same time. But thank you for the opportunity to be with you all this afternoon. And I've got a few slides that I'd like to show, and I can just kind of walk through that. But in the county's Energy and Environment Subcommittee, which we set up, that's a new committee for the county, which we set up about 9 months ago. We've been, both the city and the county both have these very ambitious renewable energy goals, right? To transition from fossil fuels to renewable energy. We have both our local government goals, and then we have our broader community goals. And both are very ambitious. And I know we're all, both organizations are working hard to identify different opportunities to take us towards these goals. So I think it might be helpful to just go ahead and just kind of walk through the slide presentation. And this is also kind of largely informational, but we do have some ideas about this is an idea that the city is interested in and open to some suggestions for sort of how we could explore these ideas in more detail. So I'll just kind of walk through the slides, and if folks have any questions as I'm doing that, feel free to ask. All right, so challenges and opportunities for achieving these ambitious renewable goals in Asheville and Buncombe County. So this is a picture of this was the first solar farm that was built in Western North Carolina back in 2009. So just a little over 12 years ago. And this is on a retired landfill just outside the little town of Canton, North Carolina. We've got things going on in this part of the state. This was kind of the first of those types of projects. Next slide, please. This is the county's retired landfill in Woodfin. And as folks probably are aware, we're working with Duke Energy to have a solar farm installed on that property. If you haven't driven by there recently, if you drive by there, you'll actually see, like, it's not operational yet, but a lot of it is installed, so you can actually kind of see the solar farm from the road. So we're excited about that project. And this will be, one of the larger solar farms in the mountain region of the state. So we're excited to see that project going ahead. Next slide. And of course, the city is working on lots of great projects as well, like the solar project down at the transit station. Next slide. And, beyond the county's own facilities, we're also looking for ways to, since the county has to pay the utility bills, we invest our county funds into the city schools and county schools and AV Tech, in part to help them pay their energy bills. We also are really interested in what we can do to support renewable energy on their facilities, because since we're already paying the bills anyway, let's invest in renewable energy systems to drive down those conventional energy costs while also helping to move towards our clean energy goals. So next slide. So, North Carolina is actually one of the largest solar states in the country. And we see more solar being built in North Carolina than most other states around the country. But most of the solar being built in North Carolina is built in the form of these ground-mounted solar farm projects, like you see in the picture here. And most of these projects are being built in the eastern part of the state, where there's an abundance of relatively inexpensive and flat land, which is ideal for building these kinds of ground-mounted solar farm projects. Next slide. And in this slide shows that for North Carolina, the different types of solar that are being installed. And the light blue is like utility scale solar farms. The dark blue is like residential solar. Yellow is on businesses. So as you can see on these slides, it's just overwhelmingly like these solar farms are really how most of this renewable energy is getting built in our state, across the state. If you just looked at the Asheville area, probably it would be a bit more on like the residential commercial side than the solar farms because of the topography issues we were talking about earlier. Next slide. And this slide basically kind of reiterates the same or similar point at the national level. So here the light blue again is utility scale solar farms, yellow commercial, the dark blue at the bottom, residential. So across the country, most of the new solar that's being deployed in our country takes the form of these large, these solar farm projects. And two of the main reasons that's why so much of the solar energy is being built that way is because, one solar farm, all these projects, every project is challenging, every project has issues to work through. But when you get a solar farm built, it may generate as much power as 500 homes or solar on 1,000 homes. So a single project, is the equivalent amount of energy of hundreds or even thousands of the smaller residential projects. And the other reason that the solar farms are being so successful is that the industry's been very successful in driving down the cost of building these projects. So as noted in the slide, the average cost to install a solar farm is less than $1 a watt, whereas the typical residential project costs about $2.65 a watt. So it's more than it's less than half the cost to put solar in a solar farm compared to the typical residential project, because you just have this tremendous economy of scales, right, in building those kinds of projects compared to a residential project. So next slide, please. These are just a couple of pictures. So one picture from, Asheville and Buncombe County, another picture of Robeson County down in eastern North Carolina. We love these mountains and we love our beautiful city of Asheville. But just kind of looking at these aerial photographs from these two counties kind of like emphasizes the point for why eastern North Carolina has been so successful in building a lot of solar farms. But when you look at that landscape in Asheville, you kind of just realize like, wow, we don't have that many places to do these kinds of projects in the mountains because at least in Asheville and Buncombe County, because we're a pretty urbanized county and we're a mountain county, right? So these large tracts of flat land, especially that are affordable, are not common here. So next slide. And some people ask, well, can't we just, why don't we just ramp up doing solar on people's homes, right? Like on residential situations. A lot of people, would like to have solar on their homes. And certainly rooftop solar is going to be a huge, and is going to play a very important role in this transition to renewable energy. But rooftop solar alone cannot get us to our goals. And really, it's just kind of a math problem, right? Like there's just not enough rooftops. And many of the buildings that we have were not constructed with putting solar energy in mind in the design of those homes. So the roof orientation and the roof design, in many cases, are not amenable to having a very large solar system or really any solar system. Or maybe the roof is older and wouldn't support solar until someday when it's replaced. And also, like in a lot of our older neighborhoods, in this part of the country, like what happens is big deciduous trees grow. Like that's kind of what, we're in the Appalachian Mountains, like we're in a hardwood forest natural ecosystem. So a lot of the homes have a lot of shading from the mature trees in the neighborhoods. And so that might be incompatible with doing solar on a lot of these properties. So rooftop solar is really important, but rooftop solar alone simply won't get us, frankly, even close to our goals by itself. So next slide. We ran this, the city and the county partnered with the Blue Horizons project to do the Solarize campaign to kind of, get people excited about doing rooftop solar. They did the most successful Solarize campaign in the country last year, which is really cool and a testimony to the enthusiasm in our community for doing solar. That project resulted in solar on about 180 homes, about 1.45 megawatts of solar installed. And they're planning to do a campaign like this every couple of years. But just for context, so at that rate, over the next 15 years, doing Solarize campaigns, we might get like maybe 10 megawatts of rooftop solar out of that type of effort. The Duke Energy Power Plant is 544 megawatts. So just again, it's important that to just kind of keep in mind, we need some other strategies too. Next slide, please. Another strategy we're going to have in North Carolina and other areas is offshore wind, and this is a huge opportunity. Some experts who've looked at this believe we might be able to get, 1/3 to 1/2 of North Carolina's energy in the future powered by offshore wind. We have tremendous resources there, so that could be a big part of the solution in North Carolina, and And that's an exciting opportunity for us that will also play an important role. So next slide. But of course, we're far from the coast, and we're also far from Eastern North Carolina. So if we were going to utilize solar energy and renewable energy built elsewhere, it would require the construction of additional transmission to import that power into Buncombe County. And the reality is that as we look to transition to renewable energy, our country is going to need a lot of additional transmission capacity, right? Like we're going to need to modernize our grid, and our grid is going to need to have more capacity. So, and we should support that as part of the necessary infrastructure to transition to renewable energy. But we all know these kinds of projects can be very damaging, particularly in a mountain environment. And so we want to minimize the amount of new transmission infrastructure that needs to be built. We shouldn't rely purely on a strategy of let other parts of the state build renewable energy and just send it here. That would not be an ideal alternative for meeting our goals. So next slide. So, there's a lot of places around the world that want to go fast on renewable energy, but which are also big metro urban areas and which don't have a lot of land. Singapore, one of the, fastest growing metropolitan areas in Southeast Asia, population over 5 million people, has almost no vacant property, right? Like it's a completely landlocked area. Its total land area is actually less than Buncombe County. the size of Buncombe County. So next slide. So one of the really innovative ideas that's emerged in the industry in recent years for what to do in some of these areas where you don't have a lot of land is to look at reservoirs and other water bodies as potential sites for locating solar projects, right? And so the basic idea is to simply use the surface of the water body in the same manner that you would use, a ground-mounted location, but rather than mounting the solar on the traditional kind of metal racking system, you develop a system that's buoyant that they can float on, basically like a kind of pontoon type racking system. The arrays can be placed on those floating systems, and you have a floating solar project rather than a ground-mounted solar project. So next slide. That picture is from Singapore. Next slide. This is just another photograph from one of the drinking water reservoirs located outside Singapore, and you can see this is a huge project. So this is like a real renewable energy power plant, right? Like this is generating a ton of power. All right, next slide. And hey, if you need anything from me, just let me know. I'm on this Zoom call, but if you need anything from me, just give me a shout. Okay, next slide. Oh, this is a picture from a pond, small lake in California. This is generating a little bit less. This is about the same size as the solar farm on the county landfill, a little bit under 5 megawatts. So a similar size project compared to what we're doing at the landfill. Next slide. This is another area where floating solar is really growing fast and kind of blowing up is in Europe. Another area where you have very high population density, land is very valuable. And so they're also looking to their reservoir systems as locations to generate renewable energy. One of the really cool things about the idea of putting floating solar on a drinking water reservoir in particular, our reservoirs, we don't have natural lakes in this part of the world. All of our lakes were built by people, either to serve as hydropower production, or as cooling reservoirs for nuclear power plants or for coal-fired power plants. Those are the main reasons that they were built in the first place, or as a drinking water reservoir. So when you put floating solar on a drinking water reservoir, one of the main ways that we lose water from reservoirs is through evaporation, right? And so when you place a floating solar array on the surface of the reservoir, it cools the water, reflects the sunlight, and actually can significantly reduce water loss through evaporation. So it effectively increases the community's supply of clean drinking water. And we are, of course, fortunate to have an abundance of clean drinking water here. But going into the future, we know that clean drinking water will be, one of our most precious resources. So, and this is a way to actually increase that capacity. All right, next slide, please. And this is just a photograph kind of closer up for what some of these systems look like. You can kind of see the floating pontoon type, devices that they're mounted on. And there's different designs for this stuff. This is just sort of one example. Next slide. And this slide sort of just shows kind of an example of how the systems are designed. They are typically, tethered to the edges or bottom of the water body so that the floating solar arrays can kind of move around a little bit. There's a little bit of flexibility in the system because water levels go up and down and things like that. But they are tethered and anchored such they're not just like completely floating, anywhere that the wind is, any direction the wind is blowing. So there's some movement possible, that they are kind of stationed in a particular area that they're planned for within the water body. And then that solar array is linked into the electrical grid. So all the power flows onto the electrical grid, just kind of like a typical solar farm. It's just located on the water body instead. All right, next slide. And this slide basically describes the growth of the floating solar technology in terms of its deployment over the last 5 or 6 years. And so, started, in its infancy, 2016, 2017, but then has grown quite rapidly since then. And this is described, these top line numbers are in megawatts. So this is, you know, as an overall percentage of the solar industry, which of course also has grown tremendously over this same time, it's still a very modest, you know, a very small percentage, but the growth trajectory is really significant. You know, as a relatively new technology, it's, you know, it's encouraging that this could, you know, it could potentially play a significant role. You know, and when you sort of just look at the, like one statistic that was shown is that if we put floating solar, it's like hypothetically, I don't think we're going to do this, but like if we put floating solar on like 10% of the man-made water bodies in the United States, we could power over half of our country from just that amount of space. So there's, you know, humans have built a lot of reservoirs, you know, and so there's a lot of real estate has been you know, set into that purpose. So it's, as we think about the future and needing a lot of solar and thinking about where's it going to go, you know, it could be, it could play an important role. So next slide. So now let's bring it back to Asheville and Buncombe County. So we have a couple of reservoirs, you know, several reservoirs in Buncombe County that could be, you know, that could be looked at as potential sites to do some kind of floating solar project. So of course, one of them is Lake Julian in South Asheville. Lake Julian was built back in the, I think they started in the late 40s, finished in the 50s. So this was a water body that was specifically constructed to be a cooling pond for the coal-fired power plant operated by, at that time, Progress Energy, now Duke Energy. So this was one that was built to basically service a power plant, right? That was its reason for being built in the first place. And of course, now the coal plant's been closed. There's a gas plant there. One of the good things about this site is that there's tremendous amount of infrastructure here because it's already be co-located next to an existing energy generation plant. So lots of, you know, you could tying it into the grid would be, you know, very easy. Part of Lake Julian, of course, Lake Julian is a popular location for doing outdoor, you know, water-based recreation. I've gotten kind of into sailing. I'm not very good at it, but I love going down there and like sailing, or when the wind's not blowing, I just kind of, you know, don't move very much, but it's still super fun. And so, you know, we would not want to like cover all of Lake Julian in a floating solar project because it would be, you know, we would lose outdoor recreation opportunities. But part of Lake Julian has a berm going through it and is not used for outdoor recreation or water recreation. So placing floating solar in that area would not be in tension with the water recreation activities that happen at Lake Julian. Hey, hang on just 1 second. I apologize. Hey, sir. Are you good? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, you're good. No, do what you gotta do.
Okay, thanks.
I just couldn't get in, so.
Awesome. All right. So Lake Julian was built by Duke Energy, again, Progress Energy back in the day, or actually Carolina Power and Light, for if we go further back. So they have some, you know, they don't, you know, technically own the lake, but they do have some jurisdiction over it as the organization that constructed the reservoir in the first place. We've had conversations with Duke Energy, and they've said, you know, they would certainly be open to the idea of a feasibility study being carried out for doing a floating solar project at Lake Julian. They don't necessarily, you know that they would be interested in building it themselves or owning and operating it, but they would be, you know, a lot of this, like going forward, you know, the state has established really great renewable energy goals too. And through the legislation that they've enacted, they basically stipulated that about half of the future renewable energy in the state will be owned and operated by Duke Energy. And the other half will be owned and operated by the other various renewable energy companies that also are in that business. So a project located at a place like Lake Julian could be owned by Duke Energy, or it could be owned by, you know, one of the many experienced solar companies that are in the business of constructing, financing, and owning and operating these kinds of solar assets over time. Next slide. Oh, and this is just kind of a hypothetical layout of what like floating solar might look like at Lake Julian, built in that area south of the berm. And so I think this was like a 12 megawatt. This would be a 12 megawatt solar project. So about 2.5 times larger than a solar project going on the retired landfill, just for sort of ballpark, you know, kind of sense of the scale of that project. So so this would be like 12 megawatts. Like, I think there's a project in Catawba County that's bigger than that, but there's no project at that size, like west of Hickory in North Carolina currently. So it would be, it would be a significant project for our part of the state. Down in Eastern North Carolina, there are projects, 5 to 10 times this size that are built where you just have, 500 acres of flat land in one place and you can do these like very large scale projects. But for the West, this would be a very significant project. Next slide. And then of course, the potentially, really significant opportunity could be at the North Fork Reservoir. It's a very large reservoir. The city does not allow any water recreation or even hiking in the reservoir to protect water quality. So there's not any kind of potential resource conflicts around recreation versus utilization for solar. So this is a hypothetical layout for a 50 megawatt solar PV system at the North Fork Reservoir. So this would be like a real power plant, right? So very significant. Sage, you have a question?
No, I'm just kind of wondering if you can contextualize this because you're talking in megawatts, and I just don't know what that translates to. Like how many households or can you?
Yep, I think the next slide's got some info on exactly that question. Yeah. So how much is these are just some like lines on maps. Like what does this actually mean? So let's go to the next slide. Okay, so for the Lake Julian site, 12 megawatts would generate a little over 18 million kilowatt hours a year. That's the equivalent to powering 1,800 homes purely from solar, right? Like the amount of energy, a typical home uses about 10,000 kilowatt hours a year, which is kind of convenient because it makes the math around doing this kind of easier. So that's the equivalent of like the amount of power used by 1,800 homes. The North Fork site, if we built a 50 megawatt floating solar project there, it would generate about 75 million kilowatt hours a year. That's the equivalent, the amount of electricity used by 7,500 homes. And so for context there, the town of Black Mountain, kind of out in that part of the county, has about 5,000 households. So it would produce more than enough power equivalent to like the whole Black Mountain, community. And of course, in Asheville, there's about 40,000 households. There's more people than that because there's like 2.8 people per household, I believe is the average. So it of course, it would not get us like to our community 100% renewable energy goal, but it would take a big step, right? Like a really significant step towards not just our local governmental goals, but a step towards that bigger community goal too. Sage?
Yeah, can you maybe explain to me, so if I'm a homeowner, and first let me just say this is wonderful and exciting, and I appreciate you being here to even share this idea that you all are undertaking and may work with us in. But so if I'm a singular homeowner and I invest in solar on my house, I save on my own power bills.
Yep.
How does community solar translate to savings for residents?
Yep. So when solar farms are built, whether that's a ground mounted solar project or one of these kind of projects, by itself, it really doesn't affect either favorably or unfavorably, the surrounding homeowners and businesses, right? Because the solar project is tied into the electrical grid. So if it's a company that's not Duke Energy that builds the project, so they go out and build the project, pay for all the equipment, pay for all the workers to install it, and then they enter into a power purchase agreement with Duke Energy, where Duke Energy is going to buy that power. And so they recoup their investment over time by selling the electricity to the utility. The utility then takes that power and resells it to all of their, all the homeowners and business customers, in that area or in that region. And, but those electrical rates that we all pay as consumers, as homeowners or business owners, those rates are all set by the utility commission. So whether we're getting that power from a gas plant or a coal plant or a nuclear plant or from a solar farm or a combination of those things doesn't change the rates. Although, one thing I will say is that solar has gotten so cheap in North Carolina that, I mean, most of the analysis points to the idea that of that overall mix of power that Duke has, solar is helping to bring down the overall cost of solar. So in general, I'd say solar is helping to mitigate the growth of rate increases from Duke Energy, but any particular project won't have an effect one way or the other on the other businesses or customers or homeowners in the area.
It is somewhat locational, I guess, via the grid. So like if government were to venture into this and build it and finance it, we wouldn't be able to, power our municipal building.
Not at either of these locations. I think, you really have to be located so close that you can like directly connect into the building that you want to connect into. So I envision these as definitely being, particularly the reservoir, right? Because it's just out in the middle of kind of nowhere, right? So you would just tie it into the electrical grid. In looking at Lake Julian, there's some, that's kind of a manufacturing area down there. And so theoretically, if you built some floating solar down there, you might be able to tie it into some of the local like industry that's down there and let them use the power, like sell the power to them. But I don't think it's near any like city or county, kind of public facilities. And the other thing I would say is that these are not projects where I envision like either of these projects would be very capital intensive projects, right? Like the Lake Julian project would be like a really simple rule of thumb would be for these floating solar projects is that they're going to cost like $1 a watt or perhaps a little bit more than that. So 12 megawatt project at Lake Julian, that's like a $12 million project. The North Fork Reservoir, 50 megawatts, that's a $50 million project or more. But I would envision that if we decided to, explore these opportunities, do feasibility, the feasibility comes back positive, that we would solicit proposals from the renewable energy community to actually come in and build the project, provide the capital to build the project and to own and operate it. So it wouldn't utilize any like local taxpayer money to actually construct the projects. We would simply be doing some of this initial feasibility and due diligence to determine like, could it work here or not? And if the answer is we think yes, then we would kind of open it up to experienced companies to come in and, make their proposals for actually doing the project. And we could, be involved in selecting the one that puts forward the most attractive proposal.
Thank you. That helps me understand.
Yeah, and maybe and Duke Energy could also be part of that. If Duke Energy, if they think more about it, maybe they come back and say, well, actually, these could be great assets for us to have in our portfolio. So they could also put in a proposal if they wanted to. Yeah.
So far around the world, we're doing this just on like bodies of water that are contained, just lakes, ponds. There's some ocean stuff, but that's mostly wind, right? We're just dealing with freshwater.
Yeah. The offshore wind is like a pretty mature technology in some ways, especially like in Europe. Like it's starting in the United States. Like with the Biden administration is is being real aggressive on supporting wind development. But frankly, that's kind of newer here. We're going to see a ton of it over the next 5 to 10 years, 15 years. In Europe, it's a very mature technology. It's actually the main source of renewable energy for Europe. And so offshore wind is great. Once you go off the coast, like the wind is like pretty constant and strong. So it's just a very powerful resource. People have this idea of floating solar in the ocean, but it's you're dealing with a lot more aggressive water movements, obviously, right, with waves and things like that. So it's a bit more theoretical. Most of what's being done now is on lakes, reservoirs, or I think like the thing in Singapore, it may actually be part of the ocean, but it's kind of in like in a protected bay area, but it may be salt water. I can't say for sure.
More about
the engineering is more challenging.
Yeah. My curiosity was more about like not fresh water, not necessarily ocean. So I'm just curious. Okay. This is great. So how can we help? And is there more details about the study?
Yeah.
Sandra had her hand up, if you wouldn't mind.
Of course.
Sandra? You're muted, Sandra.
Yes, so when I was listening to, the presentation, like you said, so it wouldn't be a direct, we wouldn't necessarily benefited from it here in Asheville directly. So it would probably be some type of indirect benefit. And so when you were talking about basically having someone like Duke or whoever, doing a request for a proposal to sort of see how it benefits us. So what you're saying is basically, if whoever we negotiate with to come in to actually do this, there will be some benefit to the people locally, financially, like you said. So I'm just trying to figure out, because before you were saying something about this, not really a benefit, and it's not going to cost us taxpayers any money. But yet and still, if someone comes in and actually do the project for us, you said we will go with the most lucrative partner. So I'm trying to figure out, evidently there would be some sort of benefit, direct or indirectly.
Sure. Good question. So in terms of benefits, at this point, I don't think there's an obvious benefit to like city or county government or even like, our constituents in terms of homeowners or businesses in terms of how the project would change their own utility rates, right? Like these projects don't tend to affect that because neither the city, county government nor our constituents are actually directly consuming the power. The power would be purchased by Duke Energy. So it wouldn't help us, wouldn't hurt us, just really wouldn't have an effect in that regard. What it would help us do is potentially bring online the largest renewable energy projects that have ever been built in Asheville and Buncombe County in order to allow us to take large steps towards meeting our city and county adopted renewable energy commitments. So really that's the public benefit of it is deploying a lot of renewable energy towards meeting those adopted goals from the city and county.
Thank you.
Yeah, good question. Next slide. I'm almost done. So I think this may be the last slide. So the basic idea that we wanted to talk about today, and I think the county staff have been talking to our sustainability staff have been talking with y'all sustainability staff about these ideas. So this is very much, a concept at this point, but I think we've been persuaded at the county's energy committee that it's worth exploring and it's worth doing some due diligence on this to see if this could be feasible in our community. And the feasibility will include, environmental analysis, financial analysis. All these projects have to connect into the electrical grid. Like the Lake Julian site is probably perfect in that regard. There's a lot of opportunities. There's, the grid's very robust in that area. The Lake Julian site's much further away. It's like 4 miles north of like NC 70, where you have transmission lines and substations and stuff like that. So one of the challenges with Lake Julian is that you'd have to build some additional. You probably have to build some additional infrastructure to connect to the solar array. And so that would all have to be looked at in terms of it could be a great project, but what's the can a project support that additional cost that a project at Lake Julian would not have to bear because all the infrastructure is right there on site. However, with the North Fork Reservoir project, it's potentially so much larger. A large project like that could very well absorb those kinds of additional infrastructure costs because it's spread over such a significant project. But there'd be a financial analysis and environmental analysis, to kind of look at, is this really potentially going to be successful in this area? If that comes back positive, then again, the city, especially on the North Fork Reservoir, where y'all are, of course, the property owner, so you would have, it would absolutely be y'all's decision whether to support moving forward at that location. If we decide it looks positive, then we could think about a process for doing a request for proposals or other kind of solicitation to bring in an experienced development partner. So at this point, the question is, should we pursue an initial feasibility study? If the city's interested, your contribution would be simply allowing your property to be part of that analysis at the North Fork site. The county would be willing to pay for the cost for doing the feasibility study. And let me just say also in the context of this idea has been endorsed by our Energy and Environment Subcommittee. It has not been reviewed by the full county commission at this time, so I don't want to overstate where we are at in our process, but the committee is very supportive of it. And I think our county sustainability office is also really supportive of the idea of undertaking a feasibility study at this time. So that's kind of the that would be the idea that we'd like to move forward on if it's a concept that sounds interesting on the city side as well.
Sage?
Ronnie, if this is something that helps, Duke meet its energy goals too, are they funding any studies like this? Or is it, I love that you're not asking the city to take on any funding, so that's great. But it's just curious that Duke wouldn't fund some of their own initiatives that help them meet their own goals. And secondly, I'm wondering, so, like you said, the North Fork is city-owned property, and during this studying, would you be looking at potentially creating revenue? Like, I know we have grounds leases. I don't know. There's probably a waters lease. I don't know. But is that something that you're considering that, or?
Yep. So one thing I'll say is like in regards to like projects like this, in a way, I'd be really excited to see projects like this move forward on either location or locations like this, kind of regardless of who ends up. Obviously, whoever owns and operates it, like we need to make sure it's a responsible party and experienced company that knows what they're doing, of course. But with that as a given, like who owns and operates it, in some ways I'm sort of, ambivalent about it because there's a climate crisis and we just need to get as much of this kind of renewable energy deployed. We have the technology to avert this crisis. It's just a matter of can we deploy it at the scale we need to and on the time frame necessary to avoid the worst of what will happen if we don't do that. So kind of in some ways, who gets credit for it? Like if Duke ends up owning and operating it, they could certainly count it towards their renewable goals. If another company ends up building it, then it's not automatic that Duke would be able to count it towards their goals if another company does it. And there is also, while again, in a way, it's like who gets credit, our future generations will not care like who took credit for it at the time, right? But we do have our city and county renewable energy goals, right? Which we want to meet for our own governmental goals. When we did the project at the landfill, we negotiated with Duke. So Duke will own and operate that system, but we negotiated with them for the county to retain the renewable energy credits from that project so that we could count that project towards the county's renewable energy goals. We did that with them in return. Duke basically said, like we originally had a certain lease rate with them that they were going to pay us for the landfill property. And we agreed to lower that lease rate in return for the county being able to retain the renewable energy certificates from the project so we can count it towards our goals. So those are the kinds of things that as we go through the feasibility study, we can look at, because I'm sure like if the city and county work together and do some of the brain damage and contribute some of our property towards this, we would love to be able to we would love for us to be able to count these projects towards our own renewable energy goals, right? So that's one thing that can be looked at through this feasibility process is like, how can we do that? If the project is built at the North Fork Reservoir, could the city potentially charge some lease, get some lease revenues off of that? I think that's a possibility. At the starting point should certainly be we should ask. It may be that as we do the due diligence on this, we might find out, this is a really financially challenged project, and maybe charging lease revenues isn't realistic. We just don't know yet because it's so early in the process. But those are all possibilities of things that we would want to explore through the feasibility process. But that could be one. Going back to Councilmember Kilgore's question, that could be a financial benefit to the city, is the potential to charge lease revenues for use of your property. Sorry, I didn't think of that earlier, but I've come around to it here before I'm done.
From staff's perspective, how much time and resources will city staff need to spend to support this feasibility process? I'm assuming that the city has answered that question.
There does seem to be some listed cons around our North Fork designation of pristine water supply. Would that be at risk? There's a note for it would not be in compliance with our existing.
Wait. I'm not asking that because that's all going to be answered in connection with the feasibility study. So, you know, I don't think we should, I guess I back Brownie up in the sense of, you know, all those questions will be asked and answered, and let's not, you know, assume it either works or doesn't work. My question is relative to how much resources city staff are going to have to spend in order to support just the feasibility study, not, you know, what happens afterward or anything like that, but and how does that fit into the work, you know, the estimate of the kind of work that either the water department or the sustainability department, or I don't even know who else would be involved with it. How does it fit into your work plans? And, you know, is it a lot of time and energy? And I see that Bridget Herring has joined the call. So maybe Bridget has thought about this.
And Councilwoman Whistler, Bridget is joining the call. She had a conflict earlier, so hopefully she heard that question. She may have literally just joined the call.
Okay.
We also have Leslie Carrero on the line, who's the Assistant Director of the Water Department.
Right. I saw that so anybody who can answer that question.
Yeah, I'll defer to one of those two. I believe we have the capacity to at least support the feasibility study. But again, Bridget or Leslie, do you have any concerns in terms of capacity about the feasibility study?
Hi, yes, this is Bridget Herring, Sustainability Director. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
great. So I think that we do have the capacity. The anticipation is that county staff will be taking the lead on organizing the feasibility and executing the procurement if there's any required. And so in terms of us conducting it, it's a lighter lift for us instead of us going it alone, if that makes any sense.
And how about the water department's, you know, sort of take on how much time and resources it would take to, again, just support the feasibility study?
I think we'd be fine. We can connect whoever is doing the study with the appropriate people of the state and the Conservation Trust and things like that.
Thank you, Leslie. Appreciate it. So are there any other questions? Otherwise, I'll bring it to, so I think what Brownie's asking us is to vote whether or not we would recommend to City Council to authorize the city manager to enter into an interlocal agreement with Buncombe County to study the feasibility of installing solar on the North Fork Reservoir and Lake Julian.
I'm happy to make a motion if we're ready. And you essentially just said it, but we can restate.
Okay.
I'll move.
No, I got it. You don't
got
need, you
okay.
could say I make that motion.
I move.
Okay. Sandra, will you second that?
Yes, I'll second.
Okay, great. And because we're virtual, I will do a roll call vote. So I'm looking for aye or nay on that motion. And Councilwoman Kilgore?
Aye.
Councilwoman Turner?
Aye, and still here.
And still here. Okay. All right, Sandra, are you still here? It's sort of an inside joke, Brownie. And I am here and also aye. So we will go ahead and ask that that council consider this. And Brownie, it was a very thorough presentation. Really appreciate that. Are you planning on giving this presentation at council?
Yeah, maybe an abbreviated version of it, you know.
Yeah, I'm thinking.
Yeah.
I mean, you know,
solar on water. What's not to like?
Yeah, kind of a little quicker. I think it was deep. It was a nice dive.
Yeah, we do. You know, we're using more of these committees too. I think they're a great way to kind of dig into the details so that the full council or commission doesn't have to do all the get into the weeds as much. So I'll definitely do more of a summary of the idea.
Okay, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Brownie. Appreciate it.
Hey,
Yeah.
thank you. I'm sorry for the tech stuff going on around me. The mini split's on. The room is cooling down, so there's been a technology success here this afternoon. But thanks for bearing with me as that was going on
That's
simultaneously.
super. That's great.
Thank you, Rowdy. Thank you
Yeah.
for being one to come and present too. I
Yeah. And I'll just say, I've worked on different projects, not a floating solar project before, but there's any number of reasons why this may not work out. But I think it's well worth us, taking a look at it and seeing what's possible. And so I really appreciate y'all bringing an open mind to it, and look forward to, talking with y'all further about it as it moves along.
Super. Thank you.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, we did not receive any written comments beforehand. We didn't get voicemail or any email comments beforehand. And I'll ask Katie if there is anyone on the line. I'm opening public comment now. So I wonder if there's anyone on the line who'd like to make a comment within 3 minutes.
Nope, nobody is on the line.
Okay, thank you. Well, with that, I will, I'll go ahead and adjourn this meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.